All right, aspiring civil servants, let's dive deep into today's current affairs. It's January 19th, 2025, and we've got a lot to cover in this first part of our UPSC-focused deep dive.
Ready to unpack some serious news. Let's do it.
First up, the Lokpal. I feel like we hear that name a lot, but it can seem kind of, I don't know, distant. What's the latest, and why is it a big deal for the UPSC exam?
Well, just a few days back, India celebrated Lokpal Foundation Day. It's the first ever, actually.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and it really highlights how important the Lokpal is becoming in the fight against corruption. For you guys preparing for the UPSC, understanding the Lokpal's powers and its limitations, that's crucial for your prep. It's not just about knowing the Lokpal exists, it's about knowing how it works and what it means for governance.
So it's more than just a name on a piece of paper, huh? How does it actually work in practice? What are the nuts and bolts?
Well, it's a multi-member body. It's got a chairperson and can have up to 8 members. And here's something that's super relevant for your exam, okay? The composition of the Lokpal has to meet certain requirements for representation.
Oh, tell me more about that.
So 50% of the members have to come from the SCs, STs, OBCs, minorities, and women.
Gotcha. So it's not just a bunch of, old guys making decisions, right?
Exactly. It's about making sure the Lokpal reflects India's diversity, all those different viewpoints.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. So we know about the makeup of the Lokpal, but how are these members chosen? Who has the power to say, you're in?
Okay, so the selection process is pretty intense, actually. There's a high-powered committee. You've got the prime minister, the speaker of the Lok Sabha, the leader of the opposition in the Lok Sabha, and then the chief justice of India.
Wow, a lot of big names involved in that.
Or actually, a judge that the chief justice nominates could be there too, and an eminent jurist as well. And based on what this committee recommends, the president actually appoints the Lokpal. So it's a pretty big deal.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense. A lot of scrutiny on who gets picked. So what happens if the Lokpal wants to investigate, say, the prime minister? Do they have unlimited power?
See, that's where it gets interesting. The Lokpal can investigate a lot of people, high-ranking officials even, but when it comes to the prime minister, there are some special rules.
Like what?
So, first off, if anyone files a complaint against the PM, the whole Lokpal bench has to agree to even look into it. And then, to actually start a full investigation, they need a 2/3 majority vote. It's tricky.
It sounds like there are a lot of checks and balances there. Okay, let's move on from this kind of high-level stuff to something a bit more, I don't know, everyday life. Smartphones. There's this new app, Sanchar Saathi, that's making headlines. What's the deal with that?
So Sanchar Saathi is tackling a pretty big problem we have these days, SIM card fraud and phone theft.
Oh, yeah, you hear about that happening all the time.
It's like a digital guardian, You can use it to report any shady activity, manage all your SIM cards, and even block a stolen phone.
Okay, so it's a one-stop shop for all things telecom security. That sounds pretty useful. Do you think this app is part of a bigger government plan for all this digital stuff?
Definitely. This ties in with the whole digital India push, It's about giving people the tools to deal with cybercrime, manage their digital lives. Sanchar Saathi is like a piece of that puzzle. But, it's not just sunshine and rainbows. There are things to think about.
Like what?
Well, think about data privacy, security, When more of our lives are online, these are things we can't ignore.
Right. It's not just about the cool technology. It's about the impact, good and bad.
Exactly.
So how does this Sanchar Saathi app fit in with other digital stuff the government is doing, like that National Broadband Mission 2.0?
Good point. NBM 2.0 is all about making sure everyone has internet access, right? Bridging that digital divide. Sanchar Saathi can play a part in that,
Great.
Promoting digital literacy, making sure people can access the internet safely and securely. It all ties together. And that's something that often comes up in the UPSC exam, how these different digital initiatives connect and impact social and economic development.
Right. It's all connected. Speaking of connections, from the digital world to potential geopolitical ones, let's talk about the Gulf of Aden. That area's been in the news a lot lately.
Yeah, seems like a hot spot right now.
So why all the attention on the Gulf of Aden? What makes it so important, strategically speaking?
Well, think about where it is. The Gulf of Aden connects the Red Sea to the Arabian Sea. And that's a vital maritime route, especially for oil.
Oil, like a lot of oil.
A huge amount of the world's oil passes through there on its way through the Suez Canal.
Ah, okay, so if something goes wrong there, it could have a domino effect.
Exactly. The whole world could feel it.
So when we hear India's defense minister warning about rising threats in the Gulf of Aden, That's not something to take lightly, right?
Not at all. It shows how important maritime security is becoming for India. And it points to the whole complex geopolitical situation in the Indian Ocean, who's doing what, who's trying to control what. That's something you'll want to be up on for the UPSC exam for sure. India's stepping up its naval presence there, and that sends a message. They're serious about protecting their interests and keeping the region stable.
Got it. So from regional worries to, well, global worries, the World Economic Forum, they just released their yearly global risks report. What's the takeaway for our UPSC folks out there?
Think of the Global Risk Report like a cheat sheet for what's keeping the world's leaders up at night.
So what are the big anxieties this year?
Climate change. For one, it's still top of mind. Extreme weather, biodiversity loss, those are the big long-term risks. But what's interesting this year is they're focusing on short-lived climate pollutants.
Short-lived climate pollutants. What's that all about?
Things like methane, black carbon, those types of pollutants. They don't hang around in the atmosphere as long as CO2, but while they're there, their warming effect is actually a lot stronger.
Oh, so they're like quick but intense.
That's a good way to put it. The report suggests that focusing on these could give us some quicker wins in the fight against climate change while we're also trying to, cut down on carbon emissions overall. It's a pretty new idea, these short-lived climate pollutants, but they're important and they could show up on your exam.
Sounds like something to add to the study notes. Speaking of new and innovative, India just launched its first commercial hyperspectral satellite constellation. It's called Firefly. Okay, I'll admit, hyperspectral sounds a bit like sci-fi to me. What is that and what makes it special?
Imagine being able to see way beyond what our eyes can see, right? Like seeing things that are usually invisible. Hyperspectral imaging can do that. It picks up data from a whole bunch of different wavelengths of light, so we can see tiny differences in the composition of things, like the ground, plants, even the air. And this Firefly, it's got amazing resolution, 6 times sharper than the satellites we've been using.
6 times sharper. So it's like having supervision for the planet.
You got it. But this isn't just some cool tech to show off. It has real uses, especially for things you'll be dealing with as a civil servant.
Okay, give me some examples. How can it be used?
Think about agriculture, for one. Firefly can help us spot problems with crops, like diseases or stress, way before we could with other technology. Or for the environment, we can track deforestation, see how bad pollution is, even check on the health of coral reefs. And in emergencies, it can help us map out flood zones, assess damage after earthquakes, guide rescue efforts. It's really about using this advanced technology for things like sustainable development and good governance, things that are at the heart of the UPSC syllabus.
It sounds like it can do a lot. So from space tech back down to Earth, and unfortunately a sad story. There was that recent drowning incident in the Bharathapuzha River in Kerala.
Yeah, real tragedy.
It's a reminder that even places we think we know can be dangerous. Tell me about the Bharathapuzha River. What's its story?
It's Kerala's second longest river, and it flows through this area called the Palghat Gap. It's actually got a pretty cool nickname, the Nile of Kerala. But, it's more than just geography. It's part of Kerala's cultural identity, and it's really important for the economy there.
So it's a cultural symbol? How so?
Well, you find it mentioned in their literature, songs, stories. It's been a part of life there for a long time. And it's vital for their economy, too. Farmers depend on it, people fish in it, and the dams along it generate a lot of hydropower for the state. The recent incident is a sad reminder that we need to think about water safety, of course, but it also points to the bigger issue of water management, something that comes up a lot in the UPSC exam, particularly when we talk about the environment and disaster preparedness.
Right. That's all connected in the end. Okay, shifting gears again, this time to the world of finance, there's something called the information ratio that's been in the news. SEBI, India's market regulator, has come out with a new directive about it. Why should a UPSC aspirant care about this?
Look, anyone who wants to work in the government needs to understand financial markets. And this information ratio, or IR for short, it's a big deal when it comes to figuring out how well mutual funds are performing.
Okay, so back up a sec. What is the information ratio?
Basically, it measures how skilled a fund manager is. Can they get good returns for investors while also managing risk? That's what the IR tells you.
So it's like a way to compare different mutual funds, see which ones are really doing well.
Exactly. And SEBI's new directive, it's all about making this information clearer and more consistent across the board. They want to make it easier for people to choose the right investments. As a potential policymaker, you've got to understand these regulations, how they affect the financial world. It's about making sure the system is fair and works for everyone.
It sounds complicated. Okay, last one for this part of our deep dive, and it's a bit of a mystery. Satellite images have shown this almost finished airstrip on a tiny island called Abd-al-Kuri. Where is this island, and why should we care?
Abd-al-Kuri is off the coast of Yemen, and it's close to two really important places, Socotra Island and the Horn of Africa. It's a strategic location, and this airstrip, well, nobody's officially confirmed who built it, but there's a lot of talk that it's connected to the UAE. They've been expanding their influence in the region.
So this little island and its airstrip could be a sign of bigger things happening in the area.
It's possible, yeah. The Indian Ocean is becoming a real geopolitical hotspot. Different countries are trying to get a foothold there. This airstrip, it could change things. It could be used for surveillance, to move troops around, even to disrupt shipping routes. And for India, this is important. They see themselves as a force for stability in the region. They're going to want to keep a close eye on what's going on there. For your UPSC prep, make sure you're thinking about this stuff. India's foreign policy, their strategic interests, how they deal with other players in the region. It's all connected.
That's a lot to process.
It is. It's a lot. But that's the world we live in, right? Everything's connected. All right, welcome back, everyone. Let's keep this UPSC deep dive rolling with part 2.
Perfect. And I think our next topic takes us on a bit of a historical journey. We're talking about the Namdhari sect and this upcoming Kuka Martyrs' Day.
Yeah, it's a fascinating part of India's history.
For those of us who might need a reminder, who exactly were the Namdharis? What made them unique?
So the Namdharis, they're also called Kukas, because of the way they chant. They started in Punjab back in the mid-1800s. Think of them as reformers within Sikhism.
Reformers? How so?
Well, they wanted to go back to the basics, a simpler way of life. They were really strict about following Sikh principles, things like social justice, equality, those were really important to them. And something you should definitely know for the UPSC, they were very active in resisting British rule.
So their story is part of India's fight for independence.
Absolutely. And Kuka Martyrs' Day, that's on January 18th, that commemorates a really important event in that struggle.
What happened?
Back in 1872, the British executed over 60 Namdhari Sikhs.
Wow, that many.
Yeah, it was brutal. They were protesting against cow slaughter, which was a huge issue for them, both religiously and because they believed in nonviolence.
That's a really powerful example of how religious beliefs, social activism, and colonialism all kind of came together. It's the kind of thing that could definitely come up on the UPSC exam. So besides their activism, what else set the Namdharis apart? Were there specific things they believed or did differently?
A few things, yeah. For one, they believed in a living guru, a human guru. That was different from mainstream Sikhism, which focuses on the Guru Granth Sahib as the eternal guru. And they always wore white clothes as a symbol of purity. They were also really strict vegetarians, didn't drink alcohol or smoke tobacco.
So they were definitely going against the grain in a lot of ways.
Oh, absolutely. And that often got them into trouble with the British.
It's a good reminder that history is more than just names and dates. It's about these movements and beliefs that shaped India. Okay, let's move from Punjab to Hyderabad now. The Musi River there has been making news.
Yeah, it's in the spotlight.
So what's going on with the Musi River? Why is it getting international attention all of a sudden?
Well, the Musi River, it cuts right through the heart of Hyderabad, separating the old city from the new modern part. It's a symbol of the city's past, its history. And now a bunch of historic buildings along the river, they've been put on this list, the World Monuments Watch.
The World Monuments Watch. Okay, what is that exactly? And why should a UPSC aspirant be paying attention to this?
So this list is made by the World Monuments Fund, a global group that works to protect important cultural sites around the world. The sites on this list, they're all facing some kind of threat. Could be neglect, development pressures, climate change, even war.
So it's like a global warning system for endangered historical places.
Yeah, you could think of it that way. And getting on that list is a big deal. It means those sites get more attention and hopefully more resources to help preserve them.
And why is that important, especially for someone who wants to work in the government?
Think about it. These sites are more than just old buildings. They tell stories, they represent values, they're part of a city's identity. Losing them would be like losing a piece of history. And as a future administrator, you'll need to think about these things. How do we balance progress with protecting our heritage? It's a question that comes up all the time. And it's not just about culture either. Heritage sites can be good for the economy, for tourism, even for the environment.
It sounds like something that could easily be part of a UPSC question. Okay, let's wrap up this segment with another look at SEBI's new directive about the information ratio. I think a lot of people hear finance and their eyes glaze over. But why is this important?
I get it. Finance can seem complicated. But it's actually pretty simple. Think of it like this. You want to invest your money, right? You want to pick a good mutual fund, one that's going to make you money.
Right, but how do you know which one to pick? There are so many out there.
That's where the information ratio comes in. It helps you figure out which fund managers are really good at their jobs, who can get you those returns without taking too much risk.
So it's like a way to compare the track records of different fund managers.
You got it. And SEBI is making some changes to make this information more transparent, more standardized. It's about making it easier for people to make good investment decisions. And for you guys studying for the UPSC, this is important because it's all about regulation, about making sure the financial system is fair and works the way it's supposed to.
Got it. So we've covered a lot of ground in this part, from religious history to international heritage and even the world of finance. It just goes to show everything is connected.
That's right. And that's what makes studying current affairs so challenging, but also so fascinating.
Right. Welcome back, everyone, for the final stretch. We're wrapping up our current affairs deep dive with part 3, focusing on you, the UPSC aspirant.
Let's tie it all together and give you some food for thought.
Perfect. Now, we were talking earlier about that mysterious airstrip on Abd-al-Kuri Island. Let's dig into that a little more. What are the potential implications of this, especially for India?
Well, remember where Abd-al-Kuri is, right? Right near Socotra Island and the Horn of Africa. That makes it a pretty strategic spot. In this airstrip, nobody's officially saying who built it, but a lot of people think it's the UAE. They've been becoming more and more influential in the Indian Ocean lately.
So this tiny island could actually be a big deal in terms of regional power dynamics.
Exactly. The Indian Ocean is getting more and more crowded. Lots of countries want to have control there. This airstrip, it could change the game. It could be used to keep an eye on things, to move troops around, even to disrupt shipping. And for India, well, they see themselves as the ones who keep the peace in the region. They're definitely going to be watching this situation very closely.
It's a reminder that geography and politics are always intertwined. Okay, let's bring it back to India now. We were talking about those historic buildings along the Musi River in Hyderabad, the ones that made it onto the World Monuments Watch list. What are the threats they're facing, and why should we care about saving them?
These buildings are pretty amazing, actually. They represent different architectural styles, different periods of history, but they're facing a lot of problems. Cities are growing, pollution is a problem, and sometimes they're just neglected, not properly taken care of.
So it's a classic case of development versus preservation.
You could say that, yeah. But it's more than just keeping old buildings standing. These buildings tell us about Hyderabad's history, its Mughal past, its colonial past, even European influences. If we lose them, we lose a part of the city's story.
It makes you think about how we balance progress with preserving the past. Tough choices. Okay, last one. Let's circle back to SEBI's new directive about the information ratio. We talked about it in the last segment, but why is this transparency in the financial world so important? What does it mean for investors?
Look, when it comes to investing, information is everything. The more information people have, the better choices they can make. That's what SEBI is trying to do. Make sure everyone has the same clear, reliable information about how mutual funds are performing. It's about empowering investors, helping them choose funds that are actually doing well, and managing risk properly.
So it's about leveling the playing field in a way.
That's one way to put it. It's about making sure the financial system is fair, that it works for everyone, not just the people in the know.
And that's a wrap on today's Current Affairs Deep Dive. We've covered a lot, from geopolitical hotspots to historical preservation and the intricacies of financial regulations.
The key takeaway for you, UPSC aspirants, is that it's all connected. Don't just memorize facts. Try to understand the bigger picture, how these different events and issues are related.
Exactly. Think critically, analyze different perspectives, and keep asking questions. That's how you'll ace that exam and become the leaders of tomorrow. Until next time, keep diving deep.